The following program may contain coarse language, violence, and mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
We're setting up for an interview to help shed some light on a dark place.
256 gig per drive, and I've got 2 of these drives.
In a virtual world that's hard to penetrate. How are you?
I'm doing well.
So, before we get going, what would you like me to call you?
Toby's fine.
Okay. Well, good to meet you, Toby. I'm Mark.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
Why, hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Egg Wars.
Toby is part of the fire and the fury in the Fellowship of Involuntary Celibates, or Incels.
Guys, fucking so much fucking rage in my fucking body.
Men who have been rejected by women, and now they want their revenge.
Women are not fit to vote. They just follow wherever they are led like dogs.
And guys like him are getting more attention because sometimes the virtual world he lives in collides with our real world.
I think all men, deep down, are really pissed off by women.
I wish you all were dead. You're all just pieces of shit to me.
And the consequences can be deadly.
You're all going to die. Pew, 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 pew.
April 23rd, 2018, North Toronto. 8 minutes of terror.
At about 1:30 p.m., a white van jumped the curb and plowed into a number of pedestrians.
Just pure carnage.
A rented van with a driver on a mission to kill.
He turned left a little bit to hit the lady on the sidewalk. That's when I saw he was very angry and scared.
And kill he did. 10 people would die. 8 were women.
That could have been us.
Another 16 were injured, some critically.
And we tried to help her, to stop the bleeding.
And yet many people may remember the incident not for how it started, but for how unlikely it ended.
You guys get down.
Peacefully. Police arrested 25-year-old Alek Minassian, a man with no criminal history. His trial will be in 2020. Until then, his defense a mystery.
These are not the kinds of things that we expect to happen in this city.
Officials were quick to label the attack an isolated incident, perpetrated by a lone wolf. The crisis, it appeared, was over.
There would appear to be no national security connection to this particular incident.
But what could motivate this kind of madness? Minassian left one alarming clue.
The accused is alleged to have posted a cryptic message on Facebook minutes before he began driving the rented van.
The Incel rebellion has already begun. All hail the Supreme Gentleman, Elliot Rodger. And that started us on our investigation, where we find 10 months after the attack, the spirit of Alek Minassian and the Incel rebellion lives on.
Hey, Elliot Rodger here.
You can trace the trail of dead back to this guy.
I've experienced nothing but loneliness and misery. And my problem is girls.
He's the one Minassian allegedly praised moments before the van attack.
Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity. Against all of you. See? Look at how fabulous I look.
The 22-year-old university student posted this video shortly before going on his own killing spree back in 2014.
And I will slaughter every single spoiled, stuck-up, blonde slut. You will finally see that I am, in truth, the superior one. The true alpha male.
He killed 6 people, injured 14 others, before killing himself. His killing spree didn't only inspire Minassian. My colleague has been monitoring incel chat groups for months, and because she's a woman, making her a target of their hate, we have cloaked her identity.
If you got nothing to lose, then going ER is legit. But who are they encouraging here?
Anyone who posts about thinking about doing something like this, or someone who posts about wanting to kill themselves, I encourage them to do this instead.
Instead of killing themselves, they should go out and kill women.
Yeah.
Going ER is an incel term encouraging others to go on their own killing spree.
It's a much better alternative than ending up another forgotten suicide statistic. Helps them identify with a movement that empathizes with their plight. Wow.
Did this online community, these keyboard warriors, inspire Minassian to kill? And did he feel at home in their world of anger and isolation? Minassian's past is shrouded by the fact he seemed to have few friends.
What's it feel for you to be coming back to your old school?
It's weird. I haven't walked down this road in a very long time.
Oh, no?
Yeah, no.
To find out more about him, I meet up with a classmate who spent 4 years at high school with Minassian.
Yeah, he was constantly bullied. Yeah, he was constantly picked on by other students, other kids.
She's asked to remain anonymous because she doesn't want to be associated with this tragedy.
They had a nickname for him.
What was his nickname?
They called him Chewbacca.
Chewbacca?
Yeah.
Like from Star Wars?
Yes.
And why was that?
Because he had a thing where he would meow at people or try to bite them. But I think he did that because he thought other people thought it was funny, or he was trying to make friends, but he did it in such a way that
it just isolated him even
more.
She says Minassian was in special needs classes in high school, his odd behavior making him a target.
I would walk to my car.
Yeah.
And I would just constantly see kids just picking on him, even surrounding him and kind of provoking him into making those meowing noises.
When did you put 2 and 2 together that you'd gone to school with this guy?
It wasn't until hours after that. I didn't even recognize the name because nobody knew his name. His name was Chewbacca. He didn't even have a name in school.
Fast forward 10 years to Minassian wrapping up his computer studies in college. In a group chat with classmates, he wrote, "Finally finished college. Fuck you all and good riddance." That was 4 days before the van attack. So what can trigger an attack like this? I'm off to meet a therapist who deals with patients who've been bullied and rejected.
Killing school timetable.
Robin Holloway shows me drawings by one of his patients depicting his violent fantasies.
So he goes to New York. David spent all day in New York killing the people.
His patient is autistic. It's believed Minassian is too.
I think a lot of them carry around feelings of being treated unjustly and unfairly because of all the rejections they feel they have experienced over time.
Holloway insists people on the autism spectrum are not more violent than others, but they are more vulnerable, making them prey to groups like incels.
Finally, you can be empowered. You're no longer a victim. You can now be the bully. You can do something. I know what I have to do to get vengeance for how I've been treated for so many years. So that can be the tipping point.
The vengeance of that van attack inspired this song and video. A tribute to Alek Minassian. We wanted to find the man who wrote the song, and that's what led us to Toby Reynolds, aka Eggman or Egg White.
This is your boy, Egg White, aka Pussy Obliterator.
He live streams, essentially online rants, for hours at a time. He's been dubbed a messiah by his incel audience.
Rest in peace to Elliot Roger. You know how we get down. We're rocking the special shirt today.
If we can't talk to Minassian, perhaps we can learn something from a member of the movement that might have helped inspire him.
Like the new haircut, thank you.
Have you had a lot of that in your life, though, where you felt that you were alienated or marginalized?
Long story short, yes, I think it was a recurring theme that I was kind of generally an outsider looking in.
He's 28, Out of school, a video gamer with no job and no hope for his future.
What did the girls think of you? Did you have any girlfriends?
All the women who had rejected me, I was 23 years old at the time, going on 24, never had a girlfriend. I was just a hideous mutant monster freak and reviled upon the world. Every time I stepped outside, people were probably vomiting just looking at me. That's just how I felt.
His Minassian song has given him what he craves, attention. Though banned by YouTube, the song lives on with more than 200,000 views. So what do we do with the Tobys of the world?
So we can't just let these kinds of things go on the forums that we see them in. We need to call them out. We need to have discussions about them.
And when we come back, I'll do just that.
But don't you see that this is part of the problem? That this is feeding the resentment. This is feeding the misogyny. And at worst, this is feeding the violence.
After I've annihilated every single girl in the sorority house, I'll take to the streets of Isla Vista and slay every single person I see there.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people. With an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds, I think I can get done. Location is Stone Douglas in Parkland, Florida.
Nicholas Cruz carried through on his threat. He's been charged with killing 17 people. It's tempting to dismiss these men as lone wolves, not driven by an ideology like conventional terrorists. But are these acts of violence really that random? Our quest to learn more about incels brings us to Grinnell, Iowa, a graceful town built around its 175-year-old college named after the town. The school's motto? Truth and humanity. We've come here looking for a little of both.
You can see that there's a conversation amongst the incels. How does your inceldom affect you? What does it mean to you?
I'm here with Ross Henfler, a prof who specializes in deviance and youth subculture.
I think it kind of gives us a nice window into the rejection and the depression that some of the incels are really feeling.
He's been tracking incel chatter.
In this post with the avatar of Elliot Rodger, one of the heroes, gives you a nice example of how mass killers can be venerated in this community.
So what led you to incels?
Incels is just a contemporary example of what I've been interested in all along, a group of men that are engaged in kind of a backlash against women and who are struggling with what it means to be a man in an environment where they sort of feel their moorings have come unglued.
Why is that turning to violence?
So the vast majority of incels are not violent, they're not acting out their violence.
But from what I've seen is when there is an act of violence, it's celebrated and encouraged for others to follow. Why is there that celebration of violence?
I think that the Elliot Rodgers and other mass killers, they do sometimes take on a mythical quality because for some incels, they embody the ultimate form of resistance against a feminist culture that doesn't value them for who they are.
We just wanted to show you something that we had come across. This is a tribute to Alek Minassian song. So what do you see when you see that?
I see a lot of anger, but the fact that he can expect to express these very misogynist, very violent sentiments and can expect to get celebrated for that from a certain constituency, that's terrifying.
But if you were to have an opportunity to speak to this individual, where would you start?
I would just want to listen for a few minutes, honestly. I have a lot of things I could say and a lot of criticism I would offer, but I would want to hear what led you to produce something like this?
Well, that's what I wanted to know too when I talked to the guy who wrote it, Toby Reynolds.
I mean, certainly this to me sounds like a call to arms for others.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that aspect, but I definitely did not have that in mind.
But online, in the incel community, there's a lot of talk of violence. There's a lot of talk of retribution. There's a lot of talk of misogyny. And when I look at your song, it just seems to fit right into it. Don't you see this as part of the problem?
Am I adding fuel to the fire by, doing something like that? I would say quite possibly. And I have considered, stepping away from being online and kind of having a presence online. I feel like, if there's young, impressionable men, I don't necessarily want to, steer them wrong.
And Elliot Rodger or Alek Minassian, they get treated as heroes by some people in the incel community. Don't you think that this can incite other lonely, desperate people to kill?
I would say definitely so, yeah. But there's people out there that are completely shut out of the world and they want to react in a violent way.
And we see evidence of that time and time again on the very public incel forums.
I'm just struck by how much there is here, how many people are weighing in about Alek and actually putting him on a pedestal.
And it's interesting, in a lot of ways, people on here seem to think he's more of a hero than Elliot Rodger is.
A hero or a zero? 63% say he's a hero.
In just 10 months, it seems Minassian has gone from a follower to a foot soldier in the incel rebellion.
One of the first things I found was this, and its poster.
Wow.
And has this van attack added more fuel to an already burning fire?
Are they really a lone wolf when they're operating in a community like this? It seems to be that they are part of something bigger here.
If we just focus on that action and that moment, and maybe even his history, we miss this larger community that's reinforcing the beliefs that are underlying those violent acts.
Absolutely.
And that's a mistake. We can minimize the kinds of context that produce the kinds of violence that we're seeing here. But that takes hard work, and it's a lot more complicated than describing someone as a lone wolf or mentally ill.
Incels are one pillar in a larger community of right-wing extremists in the US, Canada, and beyond.
I'm wondering how big of a threat do you see right-wing extremism in Canada today?
Barbara Perry says it's time for authorities in Canada to wake up to the threat of the far-right movement. She's an expert in hate crime.
If you look at the sort of successive reports on the terrorist threat in Canada, there's generally either the far right isn't mentioned or they're dismissed out of hand as, not a threat, not organized, not coherent, and therefore, not a risk.
And do you think they are?
Oh, absolutely. I think they are. We identified just what we're looking at between 1985 and 2014, 2015, over 120 incidents of violence associated with the far right. During that same period of time, there were 7 incidents of Islamist-inspired extremism. So I think that really puts in context what the risk is.
She considers right-wing extremists a clear and present danger to national security.
Our national security doesn't just rely on or revolve around physical security, but also the sense of inclusion. The divisiveness that is a result of hate crime, this is also very damaging, very harmful to national security in a very different way. But anything that weakens our sense of togetherness, our sense of unity, weakens our capacity, weakens our resilience to withstand other kinds of attacks.
And it may sound subtle, but even Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale mentioned right-wing violence recently in a speech about people who've become radicalized to extreme violence.
The van attack along Yonge Street in Toronto earlier last year had those kinds of roots. So we have seen instances in Canada where extreme right-wing organizations have been active.
Scared of me. I think she's scared of me.
So where do we start? Well, it may be difficult to confront an entire movement, but what about trying to reach one person at a time? someone like Toby.
Why would you want to be associated in any way with any kind of community that promotes this kind of violence against women?
I differ from, some of the extreme members, because even if I was at some kind of place where I was just that far, like, extremist into it, I don't know. But I wouldn't say I disavow the incel people. That would be like me turning my back on just the average guy who's kind of a bumbling type of individual who's kind of like a social outcast.
I just want to kill so many fucking people.
But don't you see here that this is part of the problem? That this is feeding the resentment. This is feeding the misogyny, and at worst, this is feeding the violence.
I mean, I do, and I think that probably the best solution to my involvement is to sort of just kind of, step away from the scene, kind of whatever problems I have personally, to kind of take them away from, the magnifying glass of sorts.
We talked for nearly 3 hours, and then something unexpected happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. I only see it as just music, but you're right, though. You're very right. And I do think that this conversation today, I think it's making my mind up kind of where I've been thinking would be a beneficial thing for me to kind of to wrap this, to basically to not be this anymore. I do thank you for, basically kind of giving me some, I think, possibly sorely needed inflection and self-reflection that I haven't maybe had. So I appreciate that, I do.
By taking Toby out of his echo chamber, it appeared there was hope for redemption. After our interview, he stopped live streaming, deleted his Twitter account, and the link to that Minassian video.
So in any case, to sum it up here, pretty much, I guess I'm going dark. I'm going whoosh. I don't know. Hopefully I don't end up in Gitmo for making a rap song.